Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anne-Marie Thomas, tōku ingoa. I am the LIANZA project manager, and my role is to support the implementation of Te Tōtara capability framework. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to the team leaders who are going to be presenting today. We've got hopefully 3 team leaders who will be joining us and sharing, bar power outages in Kapiti district, which we've already seen fixed this morning, but hopefully they won't happen again. Great to have you all here. So I am going to recap a little bit about Te Tōtara for those of you who haven't been in previous webinars, and it's a refresh, I guess, for those who have. The framework, a capability framework, is a tool for professional development. It's a tool for individuals, it's a tool for teams, and it is a tool that informs library and information planning. Where does it come from? Well, it was created by the library and information sector for the sector. There's a lot of input from people all throughout the sector in 2022. It had input from Te Raupu Whakahau, PLNZ, LIANZA, Pacific Information Management Network, and the chairs of LIANZA SIGs and others were involved. And the funding for this resource came via the New Zealand Libraries Partnership Program. The framework has received the endorsement from leaders all around the sector, and you will be able to see that sector endorsement statement along with the framework itself, and all of the supporting resources can be found on the LIANZA website. Sorry, that slide's very slow to load because it's an image of the forest. It's just not wanting to load today, but that's an image of the framework itself. So in this webinar series, we're focusing on 3 ways that the framework can be applied. So firstly, for kaimahi to identify their own capabilities and areas for growth. So it's a tool for individuals to take their own development journey. And secondly, it's a tool for team leaders, supporting individual people in their team and team professional development collectively. And then thirdly, it's a tool for managers supporting workforce and service planning. So this second webinar is focusing on the ways that team leaders are using Te Tōtara. And if you haven't yet gone to the LIANZA website, you'll find these 3 journeys described. If you go to the LIANZA professional development page on our website, and you'll get all that information there. The 3 journeys are, of course, interrelated. So the team leader who supports their kaimahi to use Te Tōtara is learning more about the members of their team, about their areas of strength and their areas for development. And in doing so, they're growing a learning and development culture in their team. It makes them better placed as middle managers to inform service and workforce planning. And at the strategic level, this supports the organisation's planning. Collectively, this is giving individuals, teams, and the wider organisation a shared language for developing the library professionals, library and information professionals, and for developing libraries. So we looked at that in webinar 1, we looked at your journey. This is webinar 2, and then in June, we're having webinar 3, looking at the strategic journey. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of how the framework's structured. For those new to it, it is a resource which describes most of the skills, knowledge, and attributes needed to work in the sector, whether in a library setting, public library, tertiary library, school library, special library, or information management service. And it also relates well to other parts of the glamour sector. So the metaphor is that of a tōtara, and that's representing an individual tree. But the metaphor extends to that of a forest of interconnected trees. If you think of your team being a collection of te tōtaras all at different levels of growth, And it also refers to the wider ecosystem of the sector. Think of that as the forest. Excuse me. So just to have a bit of a closer look at the elements. There are 4 elements to the framework, starting with section A, the roots. So the Tōtara has strong roots grounded in Te Tiriti and in Te Ao Māori, and the kaupapa that is part of Te Ao Māori. It has section B, a trunk representing the professional ethics and bodies of knowledge, and it has a wide canopy, section C, of capability groups, both interpersonal and technical. And then you'll see it has D, the reflecting, the process of professional reflection, symbolised by the falling leaves. So altogether, it's a really lovely metaphor for a learning life cycle. I mean, we're continuously learning throughout our careers, and that learning's not going to stop. So for anyone who's a professional now, the World Economic Forum actually predicts that we will all be needing to upskill at least 2/5 of our capabilities in the next 5 years. So just starting at the roots, the 7 kaupapa, these values underpin professional behaviours. When looking at the Te Ao Māori element, it's important to note that Te Tōtara was designed with a national perspective, and it's not a local one for the whole motu. So every local context has its own mātauranga, both knowledge and skills, and Te Tōtara can be a really valuable starting point for conversations between mana whenua and our institutions and our library staff. So we encourage organisations to take the elements that work for them and make them locally relevant by seeking guidance and engagement with mana whenua. Te Tōtara's trunk represents core professional ethics and professional context of shared values, ethics and knowledge. This includes the IFLA core values and code of ethics. These are the things that steer the sector through when we're experiencing a lot of change, which we are, change in technologies, social changes and funding challenges. And Te Tōtara also references LIANZA's code of professional conduct in the bodies of knowledge. So these things are the trunk. In the branches, there are 7 capability groups with 23 core capabilities for working in the library and information environment. There's the relational sets. Down the left-hand side, you'll see personal attributes, teamwork and collaboration, community care and services, planning at the top, you'll see planning, management and leadership. And then down to the right-hand side of the tree, you'll see the knowledge and skill sets around literacies, reference and research services, information, knowledge and data management, collection records and archives management. And you can begin by identifying which of these capability areas fit your role, your library and your service. There is a self-assessment structure in Te Tōtara of 4 levels. Because many kaimahi come into libraries without library-specific qualifications, that kōrero level is a very good place for people to start. And it gives that opportunity for people to identify as learners, or when you're onboarding people, the things that they're coming at that are new for them. And then there are 3 levels of descriptors for each capability: mōhio and marama and mātou. So mātou is the level for those with knowledge and leadership in a particular capability. And it doesn't just refer to a hierarchical role, it refers to wisdom and knowledge in an area. So quickly looking at the tools, an individual can choose one of 2 supporting resources to do a self-assessment and to identify their professional development goals. So using either the Taku Tōtara downloadable workbook for a comprehensive approach or the 4-pager Pā Tōtara worksheet. The Taku Tōtara workbook guides you through self-assessment. For example, this page is on literacies, references and research services. So it's a high-level sort of area where you can make some notes, self-assess your level, from being a small starting little tree to being a large mature tree. And you'll see that there's also an area there for describing your capabilities that you can share with your colleagues. So this is very much a strengths-based approach, identifying what you bring to your team as well as your own areas for development. And there is a section in the workbook on goal setting which supports people creating robust goals. This is referred to as the Atamai framework, and it's a set of questions that people can use just to help them reflect as they create their goals. And once they have a goal or goals, this is the section where you can develop your action plans. You'll see that this is a seasonal calendar. Your time frame may be short or long. It might be starting at Matariki as suggested here, or it could be any point that fits in with your performance development cycle in your team or learning needs. So Tōtara is more suitable for those with less time and for part-time or casual kaimahi. There are instructions in the worksheet supporting these strengths-based conversations between team leaders and team members, and it gives them a shared language for having conversations about learning and development needs. And it's preparation too, where you see the whakaaro there around where would I like to grow my abilities and what might I like to share. That gives you great conversation around learning and development goals that could go into your performance development review. And it's very easy just to cut and paste from the work that you're doing in a Te Tōtara framework to pop that into your organisation's PDR template. The Tōtara worksheet has this one pager which has interactive checkboxes. So you could actually go around the tree and assess the capability level that you think you're at, and also to identify areas that aren't relevant to your role. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the 23 capability sets, but that's of course not all the detail. There's a lot more detail to be found by having the Te Tōtara workbook alongside. Now, you can also use this worksheet as a one-pager for a team mapping exercise. So taking those levels down the left-hand side and then using the interactive checkboxes in the tree, you could, as a small team, perhaps get together and do this as an exercise all together. But if you're a large team, you might like to ask your team members to download the worksheet and go through it individually and then aggregate the results. You could do that anonymously. You could collate the results in a way that works for your team. So it could be workshopped as part of a team day. There's a team leader in Auckland who did that as part of a team building day. And what they found was that it really helped them show themselves, first and foremost, how they aligned with their own organisation's mission and strategic goals. And then it helped them work a way of showing the organisation what they brought as a library team to the strategic goals of the organisation. And if you join the community of practice, you do hear these variety of approaches from different people. And our presenters today come from people who have joined that Te Tōtara forum, which is a monthly forum, and you can go to the website if you'd like to click on join the community of practice. So from these team discussions, you may get agreement on a collective goal or goals. It makes so much sense for the team to create a shared goal rather than lots of team members working on the same goal when there's an area for general upskilling identified. So as well as asking where are our strengths and where are our priority areas for learning and development, you could also ask, what support would we need as a team? And if there's no expertise within the team, it gets you thinking about outside of the team, what resources are in the team next door, for example, or what resources are out there in the community. So you go looking beyond the team whāmātau, and that's part of your engagement with colleagues and part of your engagement with the community. I just wanted to share an example of a team goal that has been created. This one is to build our team's confidence to respond to a Freedom to Read challenge. So doing a team analysis can inform a team training plan. And you would look to start probably with things that are most relevant to your team at this time. So here's an example of a team who saw library ethics as a priority, and they have this goal based in Te Tiwai, which is the trunk. And it means that the Tōtara is a reference point for the team. They've selected an element, and from that they've come up with outcomes that they want to see in that team. And just like with an individual working through a workbook, you could then use the action plan in the workbook and in the worksheet to write down how you would achieve those four goals. In last month's webinar in this series, we had Rachel Fisher from Matamata Piako Libraries, and she shared her own goal setting, how she identified 3 goals of importance to herself and her role. And she also talked about how she set up parts of the Te Tōtara journey in ProMap, which is their learning and training platform. So she created a structure with the framework as the core for their own program within their own system. And if you'd like to see her talking about that, we've recorded that webinar and it's up on the website under the Your Journey section. So now I'm really pleased to hand over to some team leaders that we've got today. We've got 3 people presenting to you today. So I'm really pleased to hand over now to first our team leader from Paraparaumu, Diego.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. No itaria ahau, ko itaria te whenua tipu, ko Mantova, te turanga waiwai, ko Baldo te manga, ko Mincho te awa, ko turanga nui a kiwa te unga me te whenua, I te whakahau mai. Toi tū te tokataio. Kei Paraparaumu ahau, e no ana, ko Kapiti, te anamata, ko Pedrioli te tangata, ko Diego, toko ingoa. My name is Diego. I am the hub lead at Paraparaumu and Pakakariki Library in the Kapiti Coast. Work for Kapiti Coast District Council. I've been in this role for nearly 3 years now. And prior to that, I was a team lead for children and young adult at the H.B. Williams Memorial Library in Gisborne. Next slide, please, Anne-Marie. Just in terms of the team that I lead in these libraries, the timeline and our involvement with Te Tōtara started with the pilot that Kapiti took on, and I was involved in developing the tools, planning for my team, my direct reports, but also for the wider library. That from August 22 to February 23, my role as a team lead involved a team of 10 direct reports, and we were meeting regularly with the team for just over a year. And towards the mid of that period, Anne-Marie got in touch, and there was an engagement with Anne-Marie through leading to a focus group where my team had a conversation with Anne-Marie about our progress into Te Tōtara. And in August last year, our libraries went through a restructure that involved some of my team becoming team leads themselves, others leaving the organization. And for the last year, I've been participating in the community practice that Anne-Marie had mentioned earlier. The next slide, please, Anne-Marie. My team is over 2 libraries, Paraparaumu, which is the larger library currently in Kapiti, and Pakakariki, which is a small community library, open 3 half days a week. The team of 10 kaimahi are all public-facing roles, but with a huge range of number of hours per week they work, from just the 1 day, 6.5 hours, to nearly full time. The team had a wide range of experience Some of them were in their role a few months when we started this. Others had been in part of the libraries for decades. Huge range of skill sets, different backgrounds. For example, some coming from teaching, like myself, others from nursing. So quite a mix of backgrounds and age as well. Next slide, please, Anne-Marie. So my initial involvement with Tōtara, the metaphor really resonated with me, and I saw the potential of developing, of professional development for my team. And interestingly, different team leads within Capiti interpret it very differently, which I think is one of the strengths of the tool. In my case, the process was based on one-on-one meetings that would vary depending on the number of hours per week that the person was working. So we had either between 2 and 5 meetings per year, specifically dedicated to Tōtara. So this was on an individual level, and it was focused on self-assessment using what is now the Tōtara worksheet, because of the limited amount of time that my direct reports have outside the customer-facing role. The process was very self-guided, setting goals based on the worksheet, and hugely flexible timeframes, depending on the amount of time that each individual had available to focus on Tōtara. This led to team meetings where we regularly have team meetings almost weekly, but one of the beauty of the Tōtara, the way we used it, was that whatever was learned by the individual was then brought back to the team in presenting or sharing their understanding and their growth with the rest of the team. So sharing insight has become a very big part of the team development that was led by individual, but essentially benefited the whole team. And then following that, and as an ongoing process, there was an individual review when goals were revisited, and that we started integrating that with the wider council professional development process, and transferring those goals into what our council needed from us in terms of accountability. And next slide, please, Anne-Marie. And I guess different team leads in our libraries interpreted the tool differently, but also they have teams that are very different in terms of the amount of time and that they have available. And the key learnings from me as a team lead is the versatility of the tools. I had looked at the full workbook, and that was not fit for purpose for my team. And Tōtara was excellent into summarizing the areas where people could explore and learn about, and still being connected with other teams that had more time to dedicate into that. And it worked across roles in the sense that someone that works only 1 day a week could still speak the same language with someone that was employed full-time. And also the level of experience, the capabilities described were showing people were not familiar with library because we're coming from different workplaces, what they could aspire to. And also it will fit in the work patterns, which often required one-on-one meetings at random times to fit in with covering the front of house services that we provide. One of the key things that I've been really proud of is the enjoyment that I found in everyone involved into being in charge of the self-development. They could set their own goal in their own time frame, with their own within their own abilities, and it made it relevant to their role. But it would actually combine with those of others in the team, and when those were shared, the whole team would actually benefit. And so the other key point is the sharing of the insights that are coming through these self-development journeys, where individuals were actually engaging in something that they wanted to know more about, or they were already familiar with, but they wanted to explore more in depth. And by bringing that to the team in our meetings, it made it meaningful. It made it relevant to their role, but also relevant to the team. And the other key learning is the shared language and the shared process, having those capabilities grouped and described in words that could be shared in the different meetings, and also potentially looking at a career development and see what they could develop in the future. That consistency across, I think, is quite important, and I valued, and that's why I'm so passionate about Te Tōtara as a concept. And another key learning was the need for self-reflection and goal setting as a practice, regardless of the role in the library and regardless of how long that person had been in the library. If it brings a passion to the role, if someone can explore areas of that maybe colleagues are more familiar with, and then share it and grow together. Next slide, please. Throughout the process, we are now at a stage where we have discussed a libraries-wide reset, partly because of the restructure of our libraries, and partly because we wanted to explore the roots of the Tōtara more in depth, and we realized we needed guidance. And one of the key points that I've been debating as a team lead, based on my interaction with the community of practice, is we've been working on individual goals that then were shared, and restriction of time and possibly the difficulties for me to manage this large number of direct reports is leaning towards team goals and potentially both. And so this is where I'm currently at. The consistency and the shared language across teams is something that I would like to explore more, talking to the other team leads in the libraries, and how I very differently interpret it and use the tool and see where we can connect and continue that journey as an organization. And also the sustainability of the process. And I like the idea of Te Tōtara being a reference point for recruitment in the future and for more generally professional development within the organization. And my involvement for the last year in the community of practice, I've seen very different people engaging in very different ways with these tools. And I've been learning constantly and always changing the way I look at the tools and how I can use them. And I'm very much looking forward to the next step of our journey. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Diego. It's awesome having you in the community of practice. And I'd like to introduce now your colleague, Deborah. Deborah Gordon is collections lead at Kapiti District Libraries. Yes.
Kia ora koutou. I'm just going to bring up my version of the thing. So I have been, like Diego, involved with Te Tōtara at Kapiti since it very first began. I was very excited by it straight away because I could see the possibilities for a team like mine, which is generally an expert team. We're not front-facing anymore. We are entirely sitting at our desks doing collections work. We're a team of 5. If we're fully staffed, we're currently 4. I think one of the first things to understand was that it wasn't a classic PDP process. It was much more about exploring where you're at and thinking about what your needs might be, along with my team talking to me about what I might need from them, what they might need from me, and how you can have very specific job-related goals along with something that sort of stretches a wee bit beyond. And I have to say the later iterations of Te Tōtara have made it a great tool for building a team culture and opening up possibilities. One of the things for me is that at Kapiti at the moment, Te Tiwai, the trunk, is not very much explored at all. So our council context, I would love to do lots more work on that. And one of my team members actually put as one of her Te Tōtara goals for the year before last to learn more about how council work, what the elected members do, what the SLT does, all those kinds of things, because we in the library don't often mix with the rest of council. So she spent a happy year learning all those things. So the team that I run is very heavy on the right-hand side of Ngā Ruha. So we've had to be a bit creative. We've had, I have one person who's better at some of the tasks than I am. So how do I move her along to do different things? So some of the things we've been thinking about is how do I give them a prod to take on a leadership goal? So, it's not management, it's leadership. You can be a leader at any level, or a communications goal. So how do we communicate what we do so that the rest of the libraries team, because we're 4 in a group of 40, so check in on resilience. So that's on the left-hand side of the ruha. And one of the big things for me is get them training others. So my team does quite a bit of training in amongst the front of house teams, so like Diego's team. And this gives us the opportunity to actually mix with all the other people that we work with, because we could honestly sit solidly just talking to each other all year if we don't actually get out and do that. And that development possibility of Te Tōtara that says you give, you take, you share is really a big thing for me, that anyone can offer something. And so I've been really pushing the team to actually think about what can they teach me. The interesting thing is that can go from, so my very expert team member actually completely trained our new team member from go to woe. I obviously put in some effort, but she said she wanted to do that as a goal for herself. She didn't have any other goals for that year because that was massive. So she just went through and trained the other person. She did a magnificent job. And that new staff member, who's now 2 years in the job, has just been teaching me how to do something that I've not done before. So we are building and sharing. And my real hope for my team is that whatever expertise you have, don't feel afraid to use it. Just get in there and use it, and share it, and be yourself in the team, because we all have different things that we like. I would say that was a massive goal that Vicky took on to teach her colleague. Most of the goals, when we're thinking about them, we've thought small. So when you're a small team with big mahi, you've got to actually think, how do we fit this in? And it's a slightly different question from Diego's, where his team doesn't have much time because they're not off the desk very much. My team's off the desk all the time. That's not the problem. The problem for us is that we have a huge amount of work to do with 3 people. So how do we get goals that actually keep us going, keep us interested, keep the work going, and also build us as a team? Next slide, please. So one of the big things for me, we very early on chose, each year we've chosen a different one of the routes to focus on. And the obvious one for us would be, the people who take care of stuff, because we're collections. So we decided to choose ukaipotanga. How do we actually create a sense of belonging for the community in the libraries? Not a classic one for a collections team. definitely one that you would be doing front of house, but we wanted to look at how would a collections team exercise that. So we spent quite a lot of our team meetings. I think I dedicated about a quarter of every single team meeting to, what's your thought about this week? Or somebody would give a little presentation on ukaipotanga in their particular work, which was a really good thing for us just to get going on thinking about different ways of actually activating the roots, because we didn't actually ever share it with the rest of the team, which we should do. So one of the big things about Te Tōtara for me is that it supports thinking and discussion without judgment, because it's your own self-reflection, and you'll discuss it with your team leader. You can actually explore things that you want to explore. You can take things, you can discuss them with people, you can spend some time just thinking, how does this play out for me? So if you've got somebody who's new, you're going to be very heavily on the technical side of things. You're going to be thinking about, okay, I'm a complete bunny in the headlights. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, and I've just taken on this new job. The last member of staff that we added had no library qualifications, so she was starting in a collections team doing cataloguing, buying, acquisitions, all that stuff without any training at all. So we had to work very hard on the right-hand side of the branches. With the more expert members of the team, it was much more about how can you help that person, how can you build something that's leadership, that's communications, that's building resilience for the whole team. It gets conversations going. People talk about what they're thinking about. They talk about if it gives a really great set of jumping off places for discussion, which I absolutely love. And then it provides the support within the team to build a shared understanding of values, skills, and work habits. And one of the things is my team does quite a bit of training with the hub teams. So how can we share some of what we do? How we work? Because we're a pretty hard-working team. What does that mean, that shared language? Diego talked about the shared language. We definitely love the shared language. We have very technical language that we have to explain quite a lot of the time. So, we are thinking, how do we share? Last slide, please, Anne-Marie. Next slide, please. So the last thing is the joined upness of it. So over the last probably 8 or 9 months, I've spent quite a lot of time doing training with people outside Kapiti. And I had a recent example. Anne-Marie actually put me in touch with somebody who had just come into his job. He wasn't particularly familiar with collections. How could he draw on some expertise from somewhere else? And so one of the things I would like to think, we have the whole forest of all of us. How do we share that knowledge? How do we pool our knowledge between our libraries, our different kinds of libraries, our academic libraries, our special libraries, our commercial libraries, our public libraries? We all have completely different sort of fields of expertise. I've just come out of a meeting where a special librarian was expressing complete surprise that we would have board games and sewing machines and all that kind of stuff. So we have things that we can offer, other people have things that they can offer us. How do we actually build that into our library community? The community of practice, I think, is a great place to start that kind of thing. My work with other libraries has largely been through working with Ipukapuka, which is the Lower North Libby Consortium, and going out there, if I'm working with a small library somewhere out in the sticks, they don't have access to the things I have access to. So I can share stuff with them to make it easier for them. So I see Te Tōtara not just as local, but also building bigger and bigger, a bigger sense of the ecosystem of the forest. And as I said it right at the beginning, I've always been very excited by the idea of Te Tōtara because it feels organic. I mean, it's a tree. Of course it's organic. So that whole idea of building from the roots up, starting with your seeds of your person who's never done it before, and how can you get them to the place where they can be an expert and tell you what to do. And I love that progression and the idea that it can take all sorts of journeys to get there, along with actually, doing the job. That's my kōrero. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Thank you both from Kapiti. We've got time. We've actually got a bit of time now for talking to Siobhan Smith from University of Otago. And Siobhan actually presented yesterday at a regional webinar. So I've cajoled her into presenting today as well, but she's going to have to do a bit of a whiz-bang tour. So, Siobhan.
Kia ora, can you hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. So yeah, kia ora koutou everybody. I'm Siobhan Smith. I'm the Associate University Librarian for Customer Experience here at Te Pātaka Mataraka Otaka Whakaihuwaka. So today I'm excited to take you through my journey to date with Te Tōtara and the capability framework designed the capability framework designed especially for Aotearoa's library and information sector. So I'll be sharing how I'm using it in practice, especially in the context of our customer experience training work, and some of the tweaks that I've made to make it more inclusive and relevant to our folks. And this is very much a work in progress, and so I hope it sparks some ideas for you too. So next slide, please. So why Te Tōtara? So, well, similar to Diego, I've got a background in teaching, so I've always believed that people do best when they know what's expected of them and when they feel supported to grow. And what I love about Te Tōtara is that it's designed specifically for us here in Aotearoa. It reflects our context, our values, and the responsibilities we hold, especially in relation to Te Tiriti and Te Ao Māori. It is not just a list of tasks. It encourages us to think about our strengths and reflect on what growth could look like in our roles. Next slide, please. So I also have a connection to Te Tōtara personally, and that is that through a project I worked on a few years back where I developed a capability framework for research support librarians. So this gave me an even deeper appreciation for the value of these kinds of tools, and I was really lucky enough to then support the development of Te Tōtara, and through that work, as a result, I became very familiar with it early on. And so when it was released, I knew straight away that it was something we really could use here at Otago Library. So I started encouraging others here to explore it. Next slide. The first project using Te Tōtara is tied to our new customer experience principles. So these principles are all about how we show up for our students, for each other, for the wider university. And once they were developed, I wanted to make sure staff felt supported to actually live them out. So I created an online module with some simple learning content and a self-assessment. And so this was our first real go at using Te Tōtara, and I kept it simple, just a straightforward match between our principles and parts of the framework that made sense. It was nothing fancy, it was just kind of testing what worked. Next slide. To make the self-assessment meaningful, I picked out the parts of Te Tōtara that linked directly to our customer experience principles. I also drew on the great work that Kapiti Coast Libraries presented at the LIANZA conference in 2023, because they had used Te Tōtara in a really thoughtful, strengths-based way. And so that helped shape our own version. I just want to say that since then, of course, Anne-Marie and the team have progressed a lot of this. I think I probably develop it slightly differently now with some of the newer stuff, but I really want to mihi Kapiti Coast for those early kind of stepping stones to engage with Te Tōtara. And the goal basically for me was just to create something practical that was not just a box ticking exercise. So the next slide, yep. Now, to be upfront, I'm neurodivergent. And so while I believe in the framework, I found the reading quite heavy. And so during user testing, others said the same. So I actually used Microsoft Copilot to generate summaries of the relevant sections, and that gave people the option to engage with simpler versions of the content or stick with the full framework if they preferred. It was a first step towards making things more accessible, because I'd rather somebody engage with something than to not engage with it at all. So the next step, slide. So, looking ahead, I'm really interested in the work that LIANZA is doing to make Te Tōtara more flexible and accessible, and offering different ways to engage with it. And this kind of reflects that not everyone processes information in the same way, and development tools should reflect that. And that's the direction I'm really keen to explore further. I guess now is time for a quick little live demo. So if Anne-Marie wouldn't mind letting me share my screen, I'll just pop into here. And so I'm afraid everybody will have to watch me side profile for a little bit here. But this is our customer experience principles training SharePoint. Because we don't have a lot of time, I'm not going to labour the whole thing. I'm just going to cut straight to the Te Tōtara area, which is the self-assessment. And so effectively, I created as the first step before actually doing some of the training stuff for folks to actually have a think about where they're at, where their strengths already are, and where there is potential room for growth. I have an introduction to it here, where I kind of outline the different sections and the core capability that it's going to call upon. Bearing in mind that this is not a full suite, but you'll see I started with the soil, Te Tiriti and Te Ao Māori, and that is really important. It reflects the fact that our first customer experience principle is to honour mana whenua and Te Tiriti, and actually I have a colleague, Frank Edwards, so anybody who attends the community of practice may have had conversations with, and he's actually building, using Te Tōtara, he's building a cultural connection program for the library, which I think will really support even further the soil and the roots of our Tōtara tree. But then in terms of the branches, all of these branches, communication, accessibility, hospitality, service and relationships, diversity, inclusion and equity, the cooperation and information sharing, and also the evaluation and planning all speak to our customer experience framework and our principles. And then the task, again, I kept our entry into it quite simple. We're certainly going to be building on this, but it is that reflection exercise, thinking about whether you're somewhere between kōrero up to mātou and where you feel you land there, and then to do the self-assessment worksheet, and anybody from Kapiti are going to recognise this. Because yes, I was definitely inspired by your circles. I thought that was a lovely way to just support people to engage with it. And so each one of those, the soil and then the branches, they colour in where they feel they are at. They're asked to go away and do this in quiet time and to think about then a reflection. Are they happy with their current capability level for the role? What capabilities would they like to grow? And what do they need to enable that learning? And we, at this stage in maturity, we're just having it as a confidential self-assessment that they can choose to share with their manager or not. But some of the things, particularly around what Diego was saying about, thinking about it as a team and maybe make it a little bit more structured and that, so we can get more of that direct feedback, is definitely something we are moving towards and exploring. We're just not quite ready for that yet. And then if I go back to here, we then have the actual capabilities for them to read. But as I said, I did have concern initially that it was pretty text heavy. So I have here not only it listed on the web page, but actually a copy of it in PDF form, which does give another accessible way of going. Somebody could put this into a reader, or they could print it out if they needed to. But after some user testing, I also developed using Copilot, I have to say, using AI, but a kind of executive summary version. As I said before, people can engage with this rather than nothing at all. Is it perfect? No. Is LIANZA doing more in this work, in this space? Absolutely, and so I'm really excited about that. But this is a good, at least getting us started. And then that is pretty much where we are at there. So I'm just going to stop sharing and ask Anne-Marie if, I think there might be one last slide, which is effectively a ngā nui, and thanks for listening, and more than happy to answer any questions, whether it's here or offline via email or some other mechanism. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you for that. And brilliant that people can come to you and find out more, to all three of you, I'm sure. So any comments or questions you'd like to ask of these three wonderful presenters? I can't see everybody on screen, so just unmute and speak up if you'd like to. I get the feeling, or I hope anyway, that people will make contact with people that they think there's a resonance with how they might like to use Te Tōtara in their own settings. I'm also really interested in the learning that I've had from Siobhan's way of working, because she's really looking at learning modalities, and in this last part of the project we're looking at creating some even more interactive resources, and appreciating that people come at it from different ways of learning. So I just wanted to spend, if there's no questions, I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes just as a summary to say that if there's any interest to go into the website and find out more about the three development journeys that we're looking at, you can go to the team leader journeys part of the professional development page and just have a look at these guides. This one's for using the framework with kaimahi, so supporting your team, which we've heard great examples of today. And the other is about how you can use Te Tōtara to support collective goals. And some of those ideas are there, including how to use the process to inform your training plan. Next webinar on the 24th of June, we're going to focus from more of a organisations perspective around workforce planning, supporting learning and development culture. And I would love it if I had anybody with an example of working closely with HR and to look at how to use Te Tōtara's descriptions in your adverts and your job descriptions, populating these capabilities so that you get really focused recruitment, and if not in the immediate term, finding marvellous people by doing that, actually doing some workforce planning and saying, what do we need to look for in the next 5 years? So we'd love to see you join that webinar on the 24th of June. All those resources that we've mentioned and more are actually on the webpage. I didn't mention the e-learning resource, which is a e-learning module, which is called Take Learning into Your Own Hands, which is a nice thing to invite your team to have a look at. But you can always start with yourselves, of course, and do your own individual journey and then progress from there to working with your team, or whichever way it works for you. So unless there's anybody really jumping in at this point, Lovely to have your participation and to see how this framework's inspiring and enthusing people around the motu and across all the different parts of the sector. It's really great